We are back with Jacquelyn Aluotto, co-founder and president of No Trafficking Zone. Legislation means increased penalties for trafficking, grooming, and related sex crimes in Texas. Instead of probation or a few years, we've already seen perpetrators receive decades-long or even life sentences. All right, No Trafficking Zone, that whole movement, it started out with earlier legislation to protect areas around schools, college campuses, foster care facilities, but someone came forward and said, why not the whole state?
Yes, so that's what we had done. We wanted to make no trafficking zones first-degree felonies, 25 to 99 years, as we were implementing systems for training. And this past legislative session, Mom called me Mary Wells. Her daughter was murdered by a trafficker a week before she was going to graduate from high school. And she said, why can't we just make the whole state a no trafficking zone? And we said, well, let's try, let's fight to do it. And that's what happened. This year, SB 1212 passed out, and so now the whole state is a no trafficking zone.
Yeah, okay, so before this legislation, what was the situation? Does this just basically make it much more understandable and make it much more cohesive?
Yes, well, it's a deterrent, and it's very specialized. A first-degree felony, 25 to 99 years, will be a deterrent.
And before it was what?
Before, what we were seeing was deferred, probation.
Probably open to local jurisdictions what they would want to do.
It was just a slap on the wrist. You weren't really seeing much happening.
Yeah.
And so no trafficking zones were really focused on, if we could make it a first-degree felony, then it would be a deterrent, whether it was cartels, gangs, pimps, trafficking networks. Yeah. This is a deterrent because no one wants to go to jail for 25 to 99 years.
Yeah, and what we've seen so far, the early convictions in Houston, there was a sex trafficking ring. The perpetrator got life in prison. And also in Houston, perpetrator inducing child in sex acts and aggravated sexual assault got 174 years in prison. I'd say that's a life sentence. And then San Antonio, for continuous trafficking, another person got 55 years in prison. So we're already seeing some of these things come in and pay off. Also, we know that a lot of times big events will attract a lot of traffickers. And sometimes they're the first ones who have booked the hotel rooms and the whole bit because they know that the customer is going to be there. With Major League Sports, there was a buy-in NRG Stadium, the first no trafficking zone sports venue.
Yes, in 2020, no trafficking zone, it's the NTZ Game Over Initiative. So we work undercover ops with the Sheriff's Office, and we also track analytics with HIDA, which is the high intensity drug trafficking area, to see the movement that's coming in and out around the park and the area. And that's just important because for any event, as demand rises, supply has to rise, and sadly supply is people.
Yeah. We have the World Cup coming here.
Yes.
It's just a fact of life, that some of the things that we're going to see.
Yes, there is going to be more trafficking and more crime during the World Cup. That just is sadly mathematics.
You have other states that are looking at what you've done.
Yes, so we went to Jacksonville Jaguars. We had trained their stadium, and now we have our legislation in 4 different states to make them no trafficking zones. We're also in 5 host cities right now, helping them with their no trafficking zone Game Over initiative for the prevention and the intervention of human trafficking happening around like their stadium for the World Cup. So we're excited to see so many other states and sports teams are saying, well, we see that this is actually working and we want to do it too. And that is like the biggest blessing that we could ever ask for.
What's crazy is that this has been an effort that people like you have been fighting for so long, and we're just now getting around to people buying into the right thing. Okay, as we mentioned earlier, oftentimes somebody's being sex trafficked. There are those who are living with their pimp or out, but there are several that are still living at home, as we mentioned, and you might not know what's happening with your own child. Parents always say, oh, I would know with my own child. But there are some warning signs to watch out for. And by the way, across socioeconomic boards.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, for parents, you always think you're going to know, but because it is such a sophisticated crime and your children are being groomed, it's really hard for them to talk to parents. So isolation is a big thing. Changing who your friends are, what your interests are. If your kid is coming home with new clothes, different hair, a new cell phone, a new computer, all of that stuff is really important. And what we tell parents is, even if your child isn't being trafficked or groomed, something is still wrong if your kid is acting like that. Find out if they're being bullied or harassed. What
or
is
even
going
blackmailed
on?
in something. We've seen cases where someone had been given a sextortion or were given a drug at a party, and then they took pictures of them in certain, and they said, we'll show the whole school if you don't do this.
Yes, and that really is an epidemic that is happening, and it's very hard for kids to talk to their parents because they're like, well, my parents didn't know I went to that party.
Yeah.
Or I lied.
Or they'll be embarrassed too, because
parents.
they threatened to embarrass the entire family.
Yes, sextortion is on such a rise that's why you see suicide rates with youth up, and especially with males. And it's something that really needs to be addressed, not just in the school systems, but where parents need the proper training.
Yeah, and part of that proper training is to teach your kids boundaries early.
Yes, for us, boundaries are the biggest thing to start early, because a lot of times kids are told, hug this person even if you feel uncomfortable.
Be polite.
Yes, be polite, yeah. And so what we're telling children is ignore your instincts, ignore your emotions, do things that are uncomfortable and not speak up. And so boundary is so important, because what we're telling kids is if you don't feel comfortable doing that, just say, I don't feel comfortable. And that parents need to understand that, so that kids will understand when they're being groomed, no, I don't like this. These are my boundaries. Please stop.
Yeah, yeah. And what the community can do is a story I was sharing with you in the green room, because we've been doing this whole issue of sex trafficking since 2000. And I remember Debbie from Freedom Place sharing a story where she said a woman was at a hotel and she saw 3 young girls in the elevator around spring break, and she's thinking something's wrong here because they should be happy. They're on spring break. They weren't. And the 3 girls did not look related. And so when they got off on the floor, she got off on the same floor they did, and she saw the older girl, looked around 16, go to the left, and the 2 younger girls go to the right to another room, knocked on the door and went to the room. She went down and told security. Security went up to do a check and found out that it was the 10-year-old's first time, the 12-year-old's second time. There were 2 men in the room that had ordered them. The reason why they had the 16-year-old with them was so it didn't look so suspicious of having a grown man that wasn't related to the girls, right? And so that whole thing, if you suspect or see something, say something.
Yeah, and you bring a really good point. A lot of times too, when people see females, you automatically trust them more. Females a lot of times are just as culpable, or they're victims themselves, or they're what's called the bottom, working with the trafficker.
In fact, that when they had interviewed that young lady, she said, well, if I would do this and take the young girls in, they would take time off of what I was supposed to do.
Yeah, so you take time off, and then a lot of times with schools, we saw it with Epstein, but we see it with the trafficking in schools here is there's also a finder's fee. For every child or victim that you bring, there is a finder's fee. And that's what people don't understand. Human trafficking is a very sophisticated crime. It is not also an isolated crime. It works with financial laundering, drug trafficking.
Cartels?
Yes, it is a business, and that's what people really have to know, that it is such a big business, sadly.
What can all of us do?
Well, I think there's a lot of different things. First of all, like not only getting these laws passed, but we need to enforce them. You know, you're with certain counties and they're not enforcing the
and you're
no
right, like I
trafficking
mentioned
zone laws.
those cases earlier, those are the big ones that hit the news, but there are many more that should be coming, and they're not.
Yes, yeah, and so that's one thing. Make sure that your local district attorney's office, your prosecutors are enforcing laws. Also that your schools are educated on human trafficking, and then know them, understand like what is happening in and around your community. And the biggest thing is you have to have honest conversations with your children, and you have to know that what we grew up in is different. Kids are watching pornography at 8 years old now. Sextortion.
It's so readily available,
is happening. Putting bark on your kids' phones to monitor it. There's all these things, but they're truly important, and they can save a life and make a difference.
Jacquelyn, thank you for saving lives and making a difference.
Well, thank you so much for having me on.
To learn more about the information we shared today, visit notraffickingzone.org, notraffickingzone.org.